There's a lot of videos on YouTube about how to annotate your books, but I think they all make the problem just unnecessarily complicated, and I want to give you the simplest possible version, which is what I'm using at this point in time. So I'm going to illustrate this by looking at this book, The Disappearance of Rituals. And just as a quick little flick through, after you sort of see a book like this, you'll be able to notice a couple of things. One, that there's going to be some pages that are not very heavily highlighted, some that are very heavily highlighted indeed, and some that have got little notes either in the margins or at the top, just written in pencil. And that's essentially all I want to draw your attention to first of all, which is just, if you're not already writing in your books, make that your first habit. Just for no particular reason, I just use two highlighters. They don't signify anything, they don't mean anything. It's literally just so that different points will stand out on a page differently. If I'm looking at this, if everything was just in green, it'd all be a little bit too much. So some of it in green, some of it in purple. It just helps to stand out a little bit more. And as I actually flick through a book like this, I might realise that actually on my second round, there's certain things in here which are going to be a bit more useful for me. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a little few notes just in the margins over here and in the marginalia. So I don't know how well this will show up, but you might be able to see here, I've done a little star and I've put KP in a circle. That literally just means key point. It just means out of every single page in this book, that little section there really stands out to me. And that's important because I'm trying to set my intentions when it comes to reading. As I mentioned on the previous video, I'm trying to read so that I can learn more about myself and help my clients, given that I'm a teacher, a coach, and a mentor. So what I want to do is make a little note on here just saying exactly why it is that I found that important. So this just says, rituals are there physically, but empty in meaning. I feel like this could be quite important, especially when we talk about rituals. And then when we move over here, I've got a little point on burnout. And given that I'm building a library, this is what makes this particularly important and particularly useful. Because if that section there links to burnout, well, coincidentally, the same author has a book exactly on burnout already. So that helped me then understand what the next book on my series should be. And all I did was just do the same process on here. I went through the book and I highlighted anything that was particularly important, went through everything, made sure I made some notes just in the sections where I needed them. And then after I'd finished that, I can now see on a second glance which pages are going to be more important than others. So I just noticed there that this actually says, for this little section just down here, good summary and the needing for shadow work. That's something that's absolutely huge for me and for a lot of my clients. So what should I do about it? Well, I should start to consider what shadow work means and how to take that further forwards. And that helps to encourage the next book along. So as you can see, as I'm doing this, I'm not just annotating books, I'm trying to make links between the books that I'm actually reading overall. So rather than it being one book starts and one book ends and that's it, instead it's going to be more of how do I use these books to link together? How do I make this library an active and dynamic resource overall? As you can see for this one, I didn't actually have two highlighters available. So it made it a little bit of a mess and it's a little bit trickier to actually come back to a second read on a book like this because it is literally all just in one big yellow highlighter. So you can see the difference already. A page like this where I found almost all of this section here useful and I had to colour it all in yellow and put some stars and key points next to it. Actually, what I realised was a better situation was going to be if I start to do this but with a few different colours, it stands out a lot better. So just whatever is useful for you, and this has been for me an adaptive process. It started out by just highlighting in one colour and not writing anything in the margins, to highlighting in two colours, to writing down a couple of points, and now when I can sort of flick through a book like this again, you might be able to see up here where I've just made a little note that just says fantastic 2 pages. I know that if I'm looking for something which is going to be really, really useful, straight away, those pages are going to be exactly what I'm looking for. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. In this book here, I've recommended this multiple times, Philosophy as a Way of Life. I absolutely love this book. But you can see there's loads of sections in this that actually, although they are useful, I didn't actually highlight them all that much. Some of these parts I did, some of these parts I didn't. That, for example, here is going to be a particularly useful 2 pages. And I know that not by having to go back through and reading like 200 pages all over again, but realizing that actually page 189, that's going to be really useful, as is page 193. But if I go back through all of this, this is just looking at Marcus Aurelius, for example, I already know a lot about him now. I don't need to go back over his autobiography, his biography to get the most out of it. Same with Socrates. Once I've learnt about him, I don't need the historical information all that much. But when it comes back to going through different exercises that might be quite useful, I want to practice that over and over and over again. So as a result, I've made more notes over here. And that section stands out more so than anything else. So already you can see, just by looking at a couple of books, I've not made a complicated process. I've made it really, really simple. I've made it really, really straightforward. And all I've done is make it so that when it comes to a second read, or maybe even a third read for a lot of these books, just at a glance, I know which part old Billy, thought was particularly useful. And that starts a conversation, not just between me and the author, but between me and a past version of me. Potentially with a future version of me in the future as well, as we start to go around it all. But like I say, a lot of YouTubers, I think, make annotating books extremely complicated for no real reason. All you need is a pen or a pencil. I use 2 highlighters and I keep it straightforward. I'll put a little star next to points that I find useful. I put KP in a circle for key point if that is going to be particularly useful still. And I highlight anything which I think might be useful in the future. And realistically, that's it. I know I've made a video there which is about 6 minutes and it could have been about 2 minutes, but I just wanted to give you some examples of what this looks like as I'm building my library and what this looks like for me as I'm using it. Hopefully that's been useful for you. If you've got any more tips, let me know in the comment section, because I'm looking to try to improve on this myself in the simplest possible way. So if you've got any simple tips, just let me know. But otherwise, that's that.